Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning and welcome to Back to School with WBRC. I'm Sarah Verser, and I'm just thrilled to be hosting such distinguished leaders of our schools and all across Alabama this morning. Thank you all for joining us. Now, parents, this is your opportunity to ask these school leaders questions as your children get ready to head back to school. Let me introduce you to our panel right now. We first have Dr. Michelle Eller from Sylacauga City Schools. Dr. Eller, if you could just wave at the audience there. Dr. Autumn Jeter is from Bessemer City Schools. All right, and Dr. Uh, Patricia Neal, or Patty Neal, is from Trussville City Schools. Dr. Mike Daria is from Tuscaloosa City Schools. There he is. And Dr. Walter Goslin is from Jefferson County Schools. And we have Tony Reddick, Superintendent of Gadsden City Schools. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to give you all an opportunity just to tell us what's going on at your schools as we get ready for school. Why don't we start with you, Dr. Daria? Let's talk about what's the most pressing thing you think going into the school year?
Well, first, Sarah, thank you for having us all together. We look forward to this, and we thank you for bringing such attention to education. We are ready to start school on August 10, and we're looking forward to welcoming back our students and our families. Our most pressing issue is making sure that this is the best year yet. And to do that, we want to make sure our students are safe. And I know that's a thing that's heavy on all of our minds. And we are working with our police department and all the agencies in town to make sure our emergency plans and our prevention plans are updated and ready, because we want to make sure our students come to school and they feel safe so that they're ready to learn. This is going to be our best year yet.
Dr. Goslin, why don't we go with you now?
Good morning, Sarah. And again, thank you for having us all together and bringing attention to education. I would say that, I concur with Dr. Daria in that safety is one of our main priorities and emphasis for this school year, but also student achievement. And so our students start school on August the 10th, next Tuesday. Our teachers started yesterday. So we are still, filling vacancies and making sure that we have all of our teachers in place and all of our staff members in place.
Dr. Goslin, thank you. I was just reminding all of our viewers here on Facebook that we are taking their questions, so please feel free to submit your questions. I am monitoring it right now, and please take advantage of the fact that you have all of these leaders here who are right at the top of those decisions in education. So please take advantage of that and ask your questions. All right, so Dr. Jackson, how about you go next?
Good morning, Sarah, and I concur with everyone. Thank you for the good work that you do on bringing educational issues to light and what's going on in the schools throughout this great state. Just like Dr. Daria and Dr. Goslin, safety, of course, is probably the most paramount thing on our minds right now. Putting new things into place, making sure everyone understands what our protocols are and our procedures. And then we're going to have a good year. We've had a good 2 years it's been a challenge, but our teachers, rose to the top. Our students did everything that we asked of them. Our parents were very supportive. So we're going to have a great year this year. But again, safety will be on the forefront of our minds, as well as student achievement.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Dr. Eller.
Good morning. Thank you for hosting us today and with so many of my distinguished colleagues. I have just finished my first year as superintendent, and we had an amazing year as well with student achievement. Our teachers also rose to that challenge. On the forefront of our mind, just like my colleagues, is safety. And we have spent a lot of time this summer really analyzing our procedures, our protocols, what we have in place, looking to new technology and software that we can use to make things a little more efficient in our buildings. And so that's been, of course, on the forefront of our mind. But our goal is to equip everyone for excellence, and that equipping is our students and our teachers and our administrators, our CMP lunchroom workers, our bus drivers. And so that's our goal, is to equip everyone so that we can have a successful year.
Dr. Neal. Please unmute.
Thank you for having all of us and for putting a strong focus on education. Of course, we're focused on safety in all of our schools right now, but one of the things I wanted the parents and trustful to know is that we're relaunching our character education program in discipline reform. And right now there's a survey going out to parents that has 22 character traits listed. Words such as honesty, integrity, respect, compassion, forgiveness, kindness, 22 of those words. And we're asking parents and community members to vote on the top 9, because they are going to get to choose the 9 pillars for our character education program. And we believe this wraps in nicely to our mental health initiative and to our anti-bullying initiative as well, which is all part of school safety.
Thank you. Tony Reddick, please.
All right, I had to unmute myself. Thank you so much, Ms. Verser, for this. And I join my colleagues in expressing the importance of our focus on safety and achievement, of course. But one of our big focuses this year is going to be parental engagement. You know, for many years, we've talked about parental involvement, and we realized that, you know, parents are involved to some large degree as it relates to, you know, coming to school with their kids for athletic events or bringing lunch or whatever the case may be. But we recognize that parents are our children's first teachers. And so we're working on programs to engage them in their students' learning. While we're concerned about, you know, the achievement gap in certain grade levels, especially as it relates to literacy and numeracy, we're finding that a lot of our students are coming from homes where the parents are somewhat deficient as well. I think most of our superintendents on here could probably attest to that. So we're developing ways of getting our parents more engaged in student learning. And we're going to put a greater emphasis on evaluating personnel, in particular principals. I think there's a normal expectation that once assigned, you know, that's a lifelong job. It can no longer be a lifelong job. We've got to evaluate. We've got to determine the strengths and weaknesses, and maybe, you know, if necessary, move some people around. So that's going to be a big focus for us this year.
Dr. Jeter.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and glad to be here again as well. Sarah, thank you for having us. I echo the sentiments of my colleagues. Our top 2 priorities, of course, are academic achievement for our children, our students, and safety. But we're also putting a keen focus this year on innovation in Bessemer City Schools and hearing the voice of our employees. And how can the employee voice help us be more innovative in Bessemer City Schools? But our primary focus, of course, is academic achievement and growth, as well as school safety. And we've done a great job this summer of ensuring that everyone is trained, that we collaborate with our local police department for refresher active shooter training, and we're going to begin to implement many of those strategies this school year.
We're going to be pretty informal. Thank you all for introducing yourselves and talking about your top priorities. We're going to be pretty informal from now on. And just whenever you want to answer a question, just jump right in. I have a couple of questions from our audience, and both of them have to do with COVID. We have been through a lot in the last couple of years with the pandemic. I think this year, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this year we're breathing a little bit easier because we kind of know what to expect. But our questions from the parents are, number one, what will be the procedure if a child is infected? And are we going back to mask mandates? Who wants to start on that one? Just jump right in.
Sarah, I'll begin. Jefferson County Schools, as it relates to mask, we will start with mask optional. And we will begin our school year as it relates to all of the protocols of COVID as we ended it. Now we have our guidelines on our webpage, and we are making sure that we are sending those links out to all of our parents. But that information is available and will be sent to them. We have nurses stations, we have isolation stations, and we do provide PPEs at the particular schools. But again, as it relates to mask, we will start mask optional.
In Bessemer City Schools, we will continue to follow the protocol we set and had in place the second semester of last school year. We had many strategies in place that worked well once the numbers began to decrease. That was mask optional, and just following and continue to follow our protocol and working with our parents to remind their children of cleanliness and good habits, and how to protect themselves personally based on their particular values and beliefs. But we will start this school year as we ended last school year with all procedures. They work very well for us.
We're doing the same in Tuscaloosa City Schools. Masks are not required. They're certainly optional. We actually just approved a policy for our employees to have 5 days of COVID leave. And we encourage our employees and our students to certainly, if they're COVID positive, to remain at home following the same procedures we used last year. We're looking forward to this year. We're looking forward to being in person the whole year and not missing a minute of high quality teaching and learning opportunity.
In Gadsden City, you know, of course, I think we're all cautiously optimistic about, you know, any upturn. But I think one of the things, along with what my other colleagues will be doing, of course, in starting the school year like we ended last year with masks optional, but you're aware that regardless to what decisions you make, there's going to be a faction of our community that are against it. So one of the things we're doing is we're going to make sure we keep regular updates. That's something that I did for the past couple of years, is send out weekly updates about infection rates and what have you. And we've gotten down to well below 0.1% at one point, but there's always going to be those who have concerns about others. And so I think it's going to be important that we communicate with our community, in particular our parents, about what those infection rates look like if there is indeed one that exists in our system.
But right now, across Alabama, the positivity rate, I mean, I think almost every county is in the red right now. Our positivity rate is going close to 30%. I mean, is that a concern for any of you? Like, someone brought up a very important part about how much COVID and the isolation and quarantine protocols really took away from the school year.
Sarah, one of the things that we were so fortunate in Jasper, we worked with our local physicians and health department and hospital. And so in our discussions this year, we will stay mask optional until our numbers, start rising. But one of the things that was so concerning early on in the pandemic was the number of deaths that we were seeing in our county. So we don't see that we're not seeing that. We are seeing respiratory type infections. And as long as it runs that course, we feel like we can manage those kinds of issues. If we start seeing an increase in severe infections that require long-term intubation, then we would certainly look at changing some things and changing our procedures. But it does look much different now than it did at the very beginning of the pandemic, which is a good thing for us.
As a group of educators, we rely heavily on our medical community for advice. So I think all of us are starting this school year the way we ended the last school year, because the medical guidance really hasn't changed. I believe COVID has changed a little in these variants and the way that they present themselves. But as far as medical guidance, it's the same for the beginning of the year as it was at the end of the year. So masks are allowed for anyone who wants to wear one.
have another question from the audience. Brody wants to know, and I thought this was pretty good. If you had to describe the 2021-22 school year, what, using a hashtag, what would it be? Jump in, anybody.
I'll be glad to go first. Mine would be hashtag perseverance.
Hashtag stronger than ever, and hashtag don't really want to repeat it again, though.
I guess mine would be, go ahead.
Okay, hashtag we can do this, hashtag flying the plane while building it.
I guess mine would be hashtag endurance shall prevail.
Hashtag be resilient.
Hashtag flexibility.
Hashtag forging ahead.
Anybody else? Did I get everybody? So let's talk about teacher shortages. How has the raise for teachers helped? And have you had any teachers who were going to retire who decided to stay?
Let me jump in on that one first. I actually had literally a couple of teachers that I was informed about that decided to stay once they heard about the raise. So that has helped. And with knowing that the 4% raise that our state and State Department of Education has pushed forth also is helping us maintain and recruit. But in Bessemer City Schools, our school district is about to board approve an additional raise. They have completely revised our salary schedule upwards of 17 to 20% for some employees. This is in addition to what the state has done. So this will truly help us, even though we're in it now, recruit these final positions that we have left over, the best and the brightest, because we've done a total revamp of our salary schedule that'll be board approved this month. So we're very fortunate and excited. And yes, the state raise did help us maintain some of our employees.
And I'll jump in and say, if I can take an opportunity first to thank our legislators and all those involved. I think that raise is long overdue. Certainly is going to be helpful. We actually pulled a couple people out of retirement and a couple that did not choose to go into retirement. But I don't think our work is done there. We still have to look not only at compensation. I don't think we're at the end point on that when we're looking at comparisons to other states. But then we also just have to look at the profession itself, elevating this profession and really making sure our teachers are the professionals that they really are and being treated that way. And I think we're seeing that, really elevating this profession to where it really belongs in compensation, but also in the actual work itself.
You know, Sarah, the raise has been incredible, and I too like Dr. Daria, and so thankful that our legislature sought to increase the salary. However, we really need to see an increase on the front end as far as attracting new teachers. The raise was very good for teachers that have been in the field for a number of years, and for those that would be, looking toward retirement. It really has helped us in that way. What it hasn't done is really look at recruiting teachers, and we really need them to consider that and give a bump on the front end as well, so that we can get good quality teachers in and then hopefully be able to keep them.
What about recertification changes, certification changes for teachers? Is that helping a little bit? I know that one of our employees left Friday and last Friday, and has started with a school system this week because he had a burning to teach, and he's always had that, and that just gave him an avenue to get in there.
Well, I can say, in terms of Jefferson County schools, the compensation, the raises with the legislators, and also I want to commend Dr. Mackey and his faculty and staff for what they have done in terms of certification. And so you couple all of those efforts, and we had a pretty good summer for educators, with legislative session, to where we could move the needle in terms of recruiting teachers in different areas, and people getting and changing the way we looked at certification, and even our even the praxis. It kind of helped with recruiting teachers in the classroom. What we saw a mixture of things. We saw that it helped some people come out of retirement. It stopped people from retiring, but we also had a few people that they've been in the business a long time, and so they decided to do something else with their career, and we respected that as well. But we still have a lot of work to do, and I think if we continue to work with the legislators, along with the educational leaders and the State Department, I think that we can make more gains. It's the specialized areas now that I am seeing that we need to come up with a plan and be more focused about, especially with special ed teachers and people dealing with children with special needs.
I'd like to say I concur with Dr. Jackson, Dr. Johnston in a couple of areas. Obviously, I agree specialized teachers are important. I am a former Latin and French teacher, for example, and I can't find any of those anywhere, although we'd like to teach that. And that front end is very important. I think one of the paradoxes that we're dealing with in our system is while we have some veteran teachers who have decided to come back, I consider why it is they left in the first place. A lot of times it's just burnout. They're just, same old routine. And I think we run the risk of continuation of that from time to time, as opposed to getting a fresh new teacher who might have been able to fill that spot. With the changes in certification, for example, we do have the pleasure of being able to recruit, former engineers from, major corporations who desire to teach. There are also individuals who are seeking employment in education because of not having achieved that elsewhere, that have to really go through some extensive training to really learn pedagogy and really learn the subject matter. And I just don't like the idea of us, or the appearance of us, just filling seats or filling desks as teachers. And that's one of the things that we found ourselves either having to do or our principals having made the choice. And in most cases, maybe to get a good coach. And I'm very respectful of coaching and how important a role athletics plays in our school system. But we can only have so many physical education teachers who are teaching science and teaching math and English, because the certification changes allow them to do that. Being able to get two-year provisional certificates. What typically happens is by the time that teacher reaches that fourth year, where tenure, is an option, we're discovering that, instructionally, maybe they didn't quite meet the mark. So I don't know, a lot of folks don't want to talk about that kind of thing, but that's certainly a concern for us in and around our community.
I'd like to interject. I would concur with my colleagues. One of the areas that we see that they're still struggling is high quality elementary teachers, and especially with the requirements of the Literacy Act and the requirements that the Numeracy Act will now involve, that role is more crucial than ever for those foundational skills. And we need assistance from our colleges and universities to really help produce high quality elementary teachers. When I first began my career, I think the very first job I applied for as an elementary teacher, there were 300 applicants. Now you post a position and you may get 20 if you're fortunate, and maybe 5 out of the 20 will actually answer the call and come in for an interview. So the dynamics of what we're looking at today are so vastly different than they were 25, 30 years ago. And so we need help on all fronts to ensure that our profession is seen as a profession, as a quality profession, and our teachers are respected and revered. And we have those supports in place to ensure that they have what they need to be successful in the classroom.
I do concur with my colleagues. The only thing I would add that has been helpful is the team's salary schedule. And I think the team schedule has retained our high quality math and science teachers, and it in itself has encouraged them not to retire. And I believe I have teachers staying because of the team's salary schedule. And I think it can be used as a model for the rest of the districts. And I think that we should all aspire to pay everyone off of that salary schedule, and that would be very helpful. So I concur with my colleagues. I just wanted to add that piece about teams.
Respect for the profession. We hear you loud and clear. I have also want to know, do you have enough math and science teacher? Are those math and science teachers that you have, are they having an extra load because you can't get those positions filled?
We're in Tuscaloosa, we have them filled now, but we had to use a lot of the means that we just talked about, the different certification options, which are helpful for the short term. I really think the opportunity that we can take advantage of now is looking at the supply of folks going into the profession, because that's the long-term strategy that we need to spend time on now. But for the short term, I agree with what's been said. The flexibility that's been provided by the state and the compensation, that is helping us, I think, get by in the short term. But when we want to look at long-term sustainability of progress in Alabama, it's how do we get more folks into this profession by elevating the profession, by having compensation where it belongs, and getting more individuals into the teaching field. That's where we need to spend our attention now, and that happens in our local communities throughout this state, because that is what we need to make the progress that we need in our state.
And I'll add also, and Bessemer, we are okay. We hesitate saying that, and then as soon as I get off this call, they'll say, Dr. Jeter, we have a vacancy, but in math. But right now we're okay, and as Dr. Neal mentioned, Teams really has helped us. We're doing a phenomenal job in the area of Teams, and I honestly wish the pay structure was based as Teams is. I completely agree with Dr. Neal. Believe it or not, we have been searching for a few ELA and elementary teachers, and that has been echoed as well here. One or two here or there, because we're a mid-sized school district, but now the shift or the focus is in those areas, and going aligned with Dr. Daria mentioned, even a step further, we've got to restructure, or not restructure because I'm not higher ed, but really work with higher ed on the structure of our interns. We need a total mind, and those going into the field of education, we need a total mindset structural shift on what is an intern and how can that be revamped to maybe a year long, and how can they partner with school districts with they receive a possible supplement, or, and when I say that, I mean like substitute pay or something of that nature, where we can train them for a year, could even offer some, I don't know, I'm really thinking out of the box, but some form of a pre-contract. Again, this is just off the top of my head, to get them to merge on into your school district like a doctor does, or someone who's doing their clinicals. We need like a clinical format in the undergrad level or even graduate level in education, and really revamp and focus on there, which will help us get and maintain more students early on in the field of education, and hopefully merge into our school district, some type of partnership. But that team structure, focus on elementary, and then a revisit of how interns are categorized at the undergrad level.
Sarah, if this pandemic has done anything, I think it has shaken up the schoolhouse, so to say. And I do think there have been some innovative things brought to the table, and I think we will continue to see more of that. I think Dr. Mackey has done an outstanding job in our state board of looking at different options and working with our universities in the departments of education. But I think things are changing, and education will never quite look the same. And I think because of that, we will see some innovative practices that will come out of this that will make us stronger and will allow some flexibility that we have not seen before, that will allow us to get some really good quality people in that maybe would not have been in the field before.
I was going to echo what Dr. Jeter said. We actually partnered with 3 universities last year to fill roles and hired interns. We hired them to intern in their own classroom as long-term subs. And then as soon as they completed that internship and completed their degree, we were able to hire them full-time the second half of the year. But that was one of the ways that we were able to fill positions even last year. that were vitally important in the elementary realm.
How are those interns doing now? I mean, do you have the same issue that that they were talking about in terms of long-term? Are they good to go?
They're good to go, but we also provided instructional coach supports and mentors. So we provided a lot of supports for them through the school year, and we'll continue to do that.
I love that you guys are not just talking about the problem, but offering solutions that I think can help so many other leaders who are on this call as well. I've got Connie wants to know about the issue with bus drivers. They're concerned about that ride to and from school. You also have a shortage of bus drivers, as I understand. We had teachers who were filling in as bus drivers. So I know that you were trying to up the pay for bus drivers, and how is that working?
In Jefferson County Schools, we are starting this school year better than we've done in the last couple of years. And I think, again, the district, we did an increase in salary, and we've also hired someone special just to recruit bus drivers. And, we're close to 500 bus drivers that we employ, and we're less than 10 vacancies. So, we are feeling good about ourselves at this time. But we know that's an ever-changing mark. But again, it's just, that's always challenging. And so what we've been doing is communicating and recruiting community by community, because that is where it is. We serve 13 different feeder patterns. And so if we specialize in recruiting people from Clay Chalfant to drive the school bus for the Clay Chalfant area, then we probably will be more successful. But I'm excited that this year we're in a better position than we've been in the last couple of years.
It's a struggle for us, Sarah, because we have to contract for our buses, and so therefore we have no control of who drives the bus, and sometimes that's more of a concern of mine as to who's driving the bus, as to whether or not we have enough people to drive the bus. And we've talked about possibly buying our own fleet of buses, but we realize that along with that come mechanics, a place to store those buses, and of course then we'd have to hire the drivers. So what we're trying to do is to recruit our teachers, give them a means or a measure, maybe a supplement, to go and get CDL licensed, and give them that opportunity to drive buses. We've even got a principal who has a CDL license, and from time to time might have to get on a bus to go pick up a group of kids on a route. As I said, because we don't control those drivers or those buses, we have a little trouble with that. So I'm certainly glad to hear some of the recommendations on that in that particular area.
Dr. Daria, you are offering full benefits for bus drivers, isn't that right?
Yes. Yeah, and all bus drivers in our state are full-time. They get all the benefits. But I love the question because it draws the attention to the importance of bus drivers, not just the transportation part of what they do, but the impact they have on our students, right? Our group of bus drivers are amazing. They are educators in their own way. And we've got such an incredible group of folks. We're still 9 short. We have 9 vacancies, but what's really great, we've got this stronger than ever group of bus drivers. They take care of business, even if we don't have those vacancies filled. But the promising part is we've got 24 who are in line for certification and just have to get at these certain benchmarks to get that certification. So we're seeing some promise coming, but we've got an awesome group who are going to take care of our students on August 10 and every day thereafter.
We're starting strong and trustful. We have all of our bus driver vacancies filled right now, but the problem comes when we need substitute drivers. And so those substitute drivers, we like to have a cadre of those so they can fill in for a bus driver if they leave. But like Dr. Reddick said, you get your CDL, and then the gig is pretty good. You're working from 6 to 8 in the morning, and from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. And in between that, you can do whatever you want to do, another job or just relax during the day, but it is fully benefited. So I want to put a plug in for that being a great job for somebody who fits that mold.
I love that you took that opportunity. Let's move on to a subject that a number of you touched on in the beginning in your introductions about school safety, school security, and let's talk about school resource officers. Depending on local support, some of your districts may not have school resource officers for every school building. You correct me and tell me if that's true of your schools, but tell me about the training also that you've been going through over the summer.
Well, considering the events of June 9th for us in Gadsden City school system, I wanted to kind of chime in first here, of course, and we just recently recognized our staff at the elementary school where there was a shooting this summer, and the SRO who was on hand, who had to struggle with the intruder before the local police officer intervened. We do have we've got 12 schools, 13 including our alternative school, and we have about 18 resource officers who rotate. So there's a resource officer at every school at some point of the day. We are working with a local agency to supply more resource officers. We're petitioning to pay them more. What we're finding is that we're in competition with other school systems or other entities in and around the community who may be paying their school resource officers $5 or $10 more. So we realize we have to kind of increase our rate as well. You know, much the same can apply to substitute teachers, for example. But we think that's very important. I believe because of the incident, more of our community leaders have become more conscientious about it. Therefore, we feel more comfortable going to our city government, our city council in particular, to ask for additional funding for resource officers. I hate to admit that, unfortunately, we haven't had the best relationship with our city government. I think it's a long-standing ordeal, and we thrive each day to make it better. So that's going to be significant to us, providing a full-time resource officer at every school. Part of our dilemma is that our local police force is short 20 to 30 officers, so they can't lend them to us or release them to us, and we therefore get assistance from some of our surrounding municipalities. But raising those school resource officer salaries is going to be a push for us.
Yeah, and like
Dr. Go ahead, Dr. Derry.
Go ahead, Dr. Jackson.
Well, we too are finding that the Great Resignation is not just in education and corporate America; it is also in our police, law enforcement, fire department, personnel. So we are facing those same challenges where our police force is experiencing shortages, and we have some officers that are in the academy, but they will not be finished until October. And we do know that the SRO officers that are trained through TASRO have a very successful rate of dealing with intruders and with school safety. So we don't want just anybody off the street to be in our schools. We really want trained SRO officers, and that's a challenge for our current police department. Hopefully that will also encourage some people that maybe have thought about going into law enforcement. Maybe that will help them, knowing that schools are desperate to find highly qualified, trained officers to be in the building. But that's a concern that we have.
We're in the same boat in Tuscaloosa. We'll have officers at all schools. Our secondary schools have 1 or 2 officers there all day. Our elementary schools have a rotation with a commitment to get a full-time officer there all day long, but we too are trying to fill the spots. But we're fortunate in Tuscaloosa where our mayor, city council, and our board are all really on the same page on that importance of having that officer in the building. And our police department, I'm going to use just a minute to brag on the Tuscaloosa Police Department. They have always trained in school-specific safety and response. They turned that training up even more this summer but we just really have this a police department that is so connected to the needs of school specific issues and responses. And we're just fortunate and thrilled to partner with them.
In Trustful, our relationship with the school system in the city and the relationship between the school system and the SROs are among our greatest blessings. We have 5 schools and 7 SROs. So if an SRO is out, we have an automatic rotation to that school with a temporary SRO. They're all trained through TASRO, and they are fantastic. It's one of our favorite groups, and we appreciate them so much.
And I'll add, at Bessemer, we have a really good relationship with our police department. And as my colleagues have said, that great retirement shift also was in other areas as well. And unfortunately, police departments experienced it also. But our secondary schools, as mentioned, we have 1 to 2 at times at each of our schools, in elementary or on a rotating basis. We're looking at some other innovative ideas and ways to secure buildings as it relates to with our police department or retirees or what have you, without going into too much detail. But in the event anything is ever needed, our police chief has ensured us that the beat officer will respond. And on small occasions where we've had to call them for very minute matters, they were there within moments, and we are very appreciative of that. So we and our SROs are TASRO trained as well. And just recently, a small team of us attended the National Safety and Security Training also to hear more nationwide. And I do believe, from what I hear, our State Department of Education has a keen focus on security in our schools, and hopefully there'll be an eye on shifting funding down to schools from the state level as well, which will help us also. But we engage in active shooter training, our district safety and security team as well, and we've got to push that down into our schools at the appropriate time. And of course, we all do our drills and inform parents, so they'll be well aware what drills encompass. Drills are no longer like they were when we were children. They've evolved, and I think our parents are familiar with that, but we've just got to stay abreast of it with the ever-changing times.
In Jefferson, go ahead.
You go ahead, Dr. Gosselin.
Oh, okay. In Jefferson County Schools, our resource officers, they are very important to what we do on a daily basis. And so I want to take time to also commend the different city mayors and police departments that we work with. For example, this past week, our Jefferson County SROs were in training with police officers in all of the municipalities, and they were doing active shooter training last week with all of those municipalities. And then this week, we have our SROs at Hewitttown High School, and they have been participating in active shooter training for the last two days, and they still have one more to add to that. We have funding for resource officers at each one of our schools, but as it has been stated, we are still trying to make sure that we recruit enough people to fill those couple of vacancies that we have. And the training that they get at TASRO is paramount. And then what they provide our faculty and staff with, we are very appreciative of our school resource officers.
And stay there for a moment, Dr. Gosselin, because I wanted to explain to parents, many of them may have rushed to their schools after they saw what was happening around the country in terms of school security and shootings in schools, and wanted to know the school safety plan at the school. And you don't want your principals to tell them.
Ask that last part again, Sarah, it broke up.
You don't want your principals to tell parents the exact safety plans that are in place.
There are some things that we do share, and we can share with our parents, and of course we work with our students with a safety protocol. We want to ensure that we don't let all of the secrets out, so that again we don't compromise safety. But our parents are informed about our different safety protocols, and also the different trainings and drills that we do.
The other question I have for superintendents, really quickly, if one of you will answer this, what can parents and local businesses do? I know that a number of areas or districts have had businesses step up and say, well, we will sponsor, we will pay for an SRO?
I think that's a really great idea. You know, it kind of reminds me of the old neighborhood watch in many of our communities where, you know, everybody who lives in the neighborhood is kind of looking out for everybody's home or what have you. And I believe that, you know, we go to our local businesses, you know, to sponsor a number of different events, most of which are athletic in nature. I believe businesses would be willing to provide, if you know, when we talk about sponsorships, depending on what the business is, it could be through goods and services. It may not necessarily be a check for a salary or a fee or whatever have you, just goods and services. I think it's nice to have, you know, local coffee shops to have free coffee for SROs, for example, something as simple as that. Because I think ultimately, you know, everyone wants to be appreciated for the hard work that they do, whatever that work is. And we find that paramount in our profession in regards to retaining teachers and so on. And quite often, some of the staff, including SROs, are not factored into those things. And so I will be honest with you, in our system, I don't think anybody's ever thought about that. I hope my colleagues are doing some of that in their communities, in their school districts. I love that question because I think that's something that I will definitely pursue at this particular point. It's important. Just having, like we're having a townhouse meeting with superintendents. You know, we don't see a lot of townhouse meetings here until an election year. You know, our politicians are garnering votes, but police officers, kind of like supply chain truck drivers, are significant. We're suffering, you know, some logistics here because of the supply chain being interrupted. I think it's important that we provide some type of incentive for those officers.
I'm going to move on now to talk about academics and talk about learning loss. I've got a question from one person. Brody wants to know, discuss one thing that is new, making sure your students are college ready as well as career ready before they get their diplomas. I want you to answer his question, but I'm going to get to the Literacy Act and all that stuff as well.
I'll be glad to jump in and answer that. So one of the things that we've done is really do purposeful planning and scheduling with our students to ensure that they're on a clear pathway to success based on their ability, interest, achievement. And I've hired someone just to monitor, to ensure that they are taking the courses they need to take, that they are having the opportunities for dual enrollment, they're having the opportunities for advanced placement, they're having the opportunities for career technical education. So that we're monitoring along the way and giving them a lifeline while we have them in high school. We find that a lot of students are unsure where they want to go, what they want to do. And it's our job to kind of guide that ship a little bit in that high school realm so that when they leave us, they're set up for success. And so that's our goal. Like I said before, is to equip everyone for excellence. So we've put some additional personnel in place just to help assist our students in the way they need to go.
We try to make sure that there are plenty enough opportunities through programs that our children are interested in, and that relates to where we live and where they live. So they're also high interest. And so we have conducted and worked with several different people, surveys with our students and with our parents, and work with the economic development, Jefferson County Economic Development Group, so that we can have those programs available in our schools. Programs such as early college, programs such as culinary and welding and all of those things, fascinating things that health science that our children are interested in. But then we have to, once we have the programs, we understand the importance of informing our parents and our students of what opportunities we have. For example, we just started an early college program where 30 children received $10,000 scholarships for 4 years. And we had to make sure that we got out in the communities of Centerpoint, in the community of Pinson Valley and Mortimer Jordan, so that our parents can know this is available for you and your children and give that information to them. And like I think one of my colleagues said, once you have the interest, once you have the programs, now we have to monitor and advise. And so we are looking at, we have 4-year plans that we put together for the children, but we have advisor and advisee programs that children are paired with a responsible adult, so that over the 4 years, those adults could help them and monitor their performance and their achievement.
I think that's an amazing answer. And what I would add to that, and there's a phrase that we use around here, is expect what you inspect. Because we realize that, college and career ready could be a label or it could be a reality. There are many ways to earn that college and career ready label, meet the benchmarks on the ACT, career tech course, work key scores, those kinds of things. But I mentioned earlier about evaluation. We have got to make sure that we are inspecting what we expect. A lot of folks don't like to talk about teacher evaluation from fear that, you're singling someone out. But I believe in treating every kid at school the way I want my own child treated. And so therefore, we have to be very conscientious and cognizant of those students who maybe falling or may have fallen through the cracks and uplift those. We're doing some things here in our school system with some grant opportunities that I think are going to be very helpful to us. Thank you, Dr. Gonson. Amazing answer there.
And I'll just add to what Dr. Gonson said too. I think all of our school districts here, we offer so much for our students. Even right now, we even have federal funds to really push in and with tutoring and interventionists and instructional coaches and social emotional learning supports. But like the others have mentioned, our schools offer so much. And I would like to use this opportunity just to kind of say to our parents at large, if you're not sure what those opportunities are, check in with your school, check in with your school district. Like Dr. Gonson and Dr. Reddick talked about, we have dual enrollment for our students here. Every 10th, 11th, and 12th grader here, free dual enrollment for every student who's eligible at any of our 3 colleges and universities. And that's because of some funding here locally to do that. We're getting stronger, but we're just closing in on 60% of our eligible students taking advantage of that. We want 100% of our eligible students taking advantage of that. We've got summer learning. We were about 30% of our students were in summer learning this year, which was fabulous. We wanted more. But my point in that is saying to our parents is just check in with the schools. There's so much available, whether it's extracurricular, co-curricular tutoring, intervention support, and opportunities with dual enrollment and IB and career tech. Our schools are different from just a short time ago, and we want these opportunities available for our students, and they're there in so many cases.
Dr. Derry, I'm so glad you said that, because we had a question from a parent who was saying, well, how do our students know about these programs? And it is on, encourage the parents, please scan those websites, because most of our schools, our high schools, are offering these kinds of programs, and inquire, because sometimes the translation from the student to the parent gets kind of lost. But if you will inquire first with the school districts, I think they'll get better outcomes there. Thank you so much for that point. Anyone else?
Direct the parents to the counselors, and then we have job coaches and we have graduation coaches. So there are resources available to help coach students academically and career-wise, just like in sports. So we have those coaches in place.
And same here. We partner with our local 2-year college. Lawson State is literally right here in our backyard, and we bus our children there at the Bessemer campus and the Birmingham campus, depending on the course, absolutely free. As mentioned, we have the funding for it, and we try to over communicate about all those options that are out there for our high school students, and counselors obviously is the first line of contact, or those career coaches as mentioned. But definitely, yes, we have it here, and we partner with our local university.
Let's get to the Literacy Act and learning loss. How are you guys addressing that from day one?
First, go ahead, Ann. Go ahead, Dr.
Well, we, of course, I think everyone in the state has identified students that would be at risk for failure and have put in some structural instruction supports in place for those students. You know, it's just very important that individual students are identified for their individual needs and plans are created to address those needs. And so our teachers are very much aware of the students that they will have incoming in their class and what their needs are and what the plan is for those students to be successful. And I feel like that's probably what everybody in the state is doing, just offering extra support, more conversations between the past teacher and the current teacher, and really digging deep to find out what those needs are and to address them early.
And our curriculum department, as well as our administrators out at the schools, are disaggregating the data that we have to see what those deficiencies are with children. As mentioned, as Dr. Jackson mentioned, start them off in certain academic cohorts for intervention purposes. ESSER has provided us funding to be able to hire additional personnel, and we have ensured that we hire interventionists and other supports. We partner with a couple of companies to provide intervention support where we're having a difficult time finding personnel to serve as interventionists. So delving deep into that data right now that we've received back to see where those deficiencies are. And of course, just good teaching. Beginning of the year, you start off with reviews of previous content that the children may, even if it wasn't a pandemic, that the children may have forgotten. We know about that summer slide. So we start off with those academic reviews in the beginning as we merge into the present year content.
I concur with our colleagues, but I've got to be honest that we approach it somewhat with a little bit of trepidation, simply because we know that those funds that we get to get all those wonderful things are going to run out in about a year, and so that sustainability issue bothers us a little bit. But ultimately, we and as I mentioned earlier about the parental engagement, we've got to get some help from the outside in terms of reinforcement. I've always think that we do a great job in the classroom teaching. The problem is the reinforcement when those students are away from us. And that's why, as our colleagues have already mentioned, especially during the summer, we addressed the summer slide. We've got myriad summer tutoring and reading and literacy programs. And then we get back to normal, when we get back to school. And of course, we've got 21st century learning programs, and those things are great. But my concern is, what happens when the well runs dry? Are we going to continue? Are we going to be able to sustain it? And the answer ought to be yes. The answer ought to be yes. But it may mean a sacrifice someplace along the way. Maybe we only get 2 football uniforms instead of 5.
I'd like to interject on the Literacy Act just a little bit. I'm a former reading specialist, so this is a little near and dear to my heart on the onset. Some of the things that we put in place is we ensured that all of our teachers were letters trained from pre-K through 4th grade. This way, all of our Tier 1 instruction is really honing in on the science of reading. We also had our administrators trained as well so that they could be that support and know what those classrooms should look like for reading instruction. We implemented some vertical alignment among our teachers, and I think I heard another colleague mention that as well, as having those conversations from pre-K to K, K to 1, 1 to 2, so that our teachers are collaborating together and they understand the needs of those students before they ever enter their classroom. We did a lot of data analysis, not only with our teachers, but also with our parents. We did several parent nights and parent conversations so that our parents would understand where their child was as far as reading, what things they could implement even at home, and then where their child needs to be successful. And we also used our ESSER funding to hire interventionists. We hired retired teachers to come in as interventionists. We also hired additional instructional coaches to help with that area. And we did some creative scheduling at 2 of our buildings so that we were focusing more on Tier 2 and 3 within the school day and not relying on after school to hit those needs that we knew needed to be taken care of with the foundational reading skills.
Dr. Eller, I thank you so much, and to all of our superintendents. Can you believe the time has gone by so quickly? And I want to thank all of you for participating. And all of you have emails, so parents can reach out to you there. I want them to know that you are accessible and you want to hear from them. I don't know a superintendent who doesn't want to hear from parents. Unless there's something wrong, and we'll get to that on another story. But anyway, thank you all for joining us. Dr. Michelle Eller, Sylacauga Schools, Dr. Autumn Jeter, Bessemer City Schools, Dr. Patricia Neal, Trustful City Schools, Dr. Ann Jackson, Jasper City Schools, Dr. Mike Daria, Tuscaloosa City Schools, Dr. Walter Gosselin, Jefferson County Schools, and Tony Riddick, a superintendent of Gadsden City Schools. Thank you for joining us. And I hope this really helped you, our viewers out there, as you get ready to go back to school, and let us know what your concerns are. Have a good day, everybody.